This week was a very hospital heavy week. And what I mean by that is I spent a lot of time in the hospital. So, as you know in the last few videos, on the night of Sunday to Monday, spent the entire time in the ER. And then I had appointments and for blood tests and my meeting with my oncologist on Monday. And then on Wednesday, I had my immunotherapy treatment. And then today, on Friday, I had an appointment with, well, I thought it was a respirologist. Turns out that it was only a, actually, I don't even know the term in English. She only told me in French. Um, anyway, basically someone who administers tests to, test your lung capacity, your breathing, and stuff like that. So she ran a bunch of, well, made me do a bunch of tests because the way that it works, if you've never done it before, and I hadn't before, I didn't even really know it was a thing. So there's kind of a machine plugged into a computer, and the machine is kind of just like an arm, like sticking out, and it's pretty much like a tube. And at the end of it, you kind of like clip this mouthpiece, and then you have to wrap your lips around it while your nose is blocked and breathe into it and do whatever the person administering the test tells you to do. So it's like, sometimes it's like, oh, just breathe normally. Other times it's like, all right, inhale very deeply. All right, hold it. And then exhale as much as you can and keep exhaling, exhaling, exhaling until there's no air left. And, you go through different cycles of that. Sometimes you hold your breath. Sometimes you, just try to get all the air out. Sometimes you're like, it kind of like blocks and you basically blow out as much as you can, putting as much pressure in your breath as you can. And then sometimes you're trying to suck it in, and then sometimes you're taking like tiny little breaths. It was really weird. Like, I'm not sure exactly what they're testing or how it works, but the process was kind of strange. Plus, most of the time, like every once in a while, you get to take a little break, but most of the time it's like your nose is blocked and you're just like, you have that tube like stuck, like shoved in your mouth, and you're just like, okay, this is awkward. Plus, like, there's the computer screen and the person administering the test is sitting there, and you can kind of see, like, there's like the line going up and down, and sometimes it goes in circles and stuff like that. And you can kind of like figure out, like, okay, it goes higher when I breathe in, and then when I exhale, it goes down. The less air there's in my lungs and stuff like that. But it's like most of it, you're just like kind of glancing at the screen, and you're like, I have no clue what's going on, what any of this tests. Like, I get that it's basically just to test your lung capacity, your breathing, your limits, stuff like that. But yeah, I have no idea how it works or exactly what they're testing. So anyway, did that for a while. Then after a while, we went to another room where we do similar exercises. Only for some reason, this time you're like sitting in a plexiglass box, like tiny. You're just like sitting there, tube in your mouth, door closed, and like I'm sure there's, a tiny bit of air circulation so you don't suffocate. Then again, you are breathing through a tube, so maybe not. But it was like airtight enough that you can, like, they need a microphone to be able to speak to you and for you to speak to them during the breaks. And you kind of like feel your ears kind of like, when you're like on a plane, your ears pop and you just like feel the scent, like the pressure in your ears. It kind of felt like that. Like I could feel the pressure against my eardrums when I was in the box. And yeah, it was just strange. So anyway, did a bunch of stuff in there. And because it was like so airtight, I could literally hear myself breathing, and not just like, normal breathing of like, but of like, let's say you have to exhale and you're like, and like, when you get to the end of it and it feels like you're not really exhaling anything because you don't hear anything, well, it's like in that box, you can hear that. So you can tell after like, like a good 10, 15 seconds of exhaling, it feels like you have no air left in your lungs. You keep exhaling. when you're in the box, you can actually hear that noise. So you're like, oh, okay, there's still a little air coming out. So it was a very strange experience. But yeah, we did a bunch of other like tests similar to the ones before. Don't really know why I had to be in the box for that one, but apparently I was. Ironically, one of the worst things was the chair in the box was made completely of wood. And as I've mentioned previously, I lost some weight at some point in the past, and I'm just so skinny at this point that, it's uncomfortable to sit for extended period of time. And sitting on a fully wooden chair is very, very uncomfortable because it's basically just like, instead of having your, bones and then a layer of fat on top of that and muscle and stuff, it's like bone, skin, bam, chair. So very uncomfortable. Luckily, we weren't in there for too long, maybe like 5 minutes, something like that. Once we were done with that, we went back to the other room. And what they did, so the way it works, like we did a bunch of exercises in the first room. Then she gave me Ventolin to see if it would help, with the breathing to expand my lungs and make it easier to breathe because, they did prescribe a Ventolin inhaler to me a while back. Tried it a few times. It didn't really seem to have an effect, so I just stopped using it. But they still wanted to test it to see if it does make a difference because, they have the necessary equipment to figure it out exactly. Yes, it works, or yes, it doesn't work. So anyway, did a bunch of tests, then, took some Ventolin, went to the other room, did the other tests like in the little cubicle that I was telling you about, then went back to the previous room, and then pretty much repeated the same exercises we did in the beginning. But because of the delay between the two, it gave the Ventolin that I took after the first time to really take effect. That we were able to compare before Ventolin, after Ventolin, and we're able to determine, okay, did it help or not? So we did some tests, and turns out it did help. However, I am slightly skeptical. I'm not saying it didn't help at all. It probably did. But I've also noticed in the past that when I do breathing exercises, and especially when I breathe deeply, it helps open up my lungs. So it's like, I feel like part of the fact that it was better the second time was because of just all the breathing exercises we did and the fact that I was breathing in very deeply, exhaling very deeply. That definitely helps. So I think it's kind of like partly the Ventolin, partly the fact that we're doing exercises. So at this point, we got the results. She printed it out, gave me a copy. So if I see my doctors, I can show them. And then 4 weeks from now, the results will officially be in the system. So any of my doctors can access it whenever they want. So, given the fact that it's the holidays and I'm going to start a new immunotherapy regimen, there's going to be a delay. So it's probably going to be, 4 weeks or more by the time I see my doctor the next time. So probably not an issue. And it's like, honestly, I didn't even look at the results, but it's like, I know that even if I look at it, I'm not going to know what I'm looking at. It's like, okay, maybe I'll be able to determine, well, okay, it was, better after than before, but I have no idea what this tells me. So that's the thing. It's like we did the test now. It's pretty much like, well, wait a month till you see your doctors, and they will be able to determine what to do with that. So she said, there's, I would, or what they're probably going to do is, given the results, prescribe a long-lasting type of Ventolin. That way, you're going to take it, let's say, like twice a day, and that means that your bronchi are always going to be coated with that, well, whatever it is, I don't know what it's called exactly, but whatever is in that Ventolin that helps you breathe, your lungs or your bronchi is going to be coated in that pretty much all the time. It's going to help you to breathe easier for, hopefully most of the time. So that's kind of like one thing she implied they would probably do. And the other thing is she's like, hey, I would suggest that you ask for a referral for a, forget what the term is. Anyway, pulmonary expert, forget the exact term that she used. But yeah, having someone who's an expert in lungs follow me regularly, as opposed to just, having like one meeting or running some tests once. It's like having an expert who just follows me and sees me every, I don't know, maybe every couple months, something like that. She's like, I think that would be good for you given your situation. So, took note of that. I'm going to mention it to my oncologist next time I see him. So at this moment, it doesn't really change anything. It's just a question of, okay, I did the tests, we have the results. When I see my doctor next, I'm going to show him the results, or he's going to access them in the system depending what time it is. And then he's going to determine what the best thing is and probably refer me to a lung expert that can kind of, follow me and make sure that everything is fine on that front, which is good. So, this entire approach seems to really be focused on the breathing, the lung capacity, which is definitely good. If it can help me breathe better, that is definitely awesome. But I was kind of hoping it would be a little more because there's other issues. Like, okay, what about the coughing? What about like, all the phlegm that I have? And that's partly, or not interfering, but it's like, not necessarily that's what's causing the coughing, but to some degree it is. It's definitely not making it better. So it's like, I was kind of hoping they would also explore that aspect. Maybe that's something I can explore and discuss with that pulmonary expert when I get a reference to him, when I, start getting followed by him. That would definitely be nice. But even if all we can do, even if all that comes out of this, the test we did today, is me being able to breathe better, that is definitely going to be a win. Because, at this point, it's pretty much been at least 7 months since I got a few weeks before I got the radiotherapy in my lung. Because, that's why I got the radiotherapy in my lungs, because I was having issues. I was having issues with breath, being out of breath faster, and I was having issues with coughing. So that's why we did it. So it's like, at this point, maybe like 8 months since I started having breathing and coughing issues, to the point where it's like, okay, it's noticeable. It's something that impacts my everyday life. And, if you've ever had asthma or experienced, breathing issues in the past, you know that it sucks. And having it consistently for multiple months on end, it's not fun, first of all, but it also kind of becomes exhausting. Kind of like the same thing of, it's hard for me to sleep. I wake up a lot of times during the night, and, because of the breathing issues, because of the coughing, obviously it makes it more difficult. And it's like, that adds up. When you can't get proper rest, you just keep getting more and more and more tired. And it's kind of like the same thing. It's like, when you have breathing issues for months on end, it's like it doesn't necessarily, compound and get worse, but it just like, it never goes away and you can never breathe fully normally. And it sucks. Like, it's not pleasant. So if we can fix, even if it's just that one thing, it doesn't affect the coughing or the phlegm or any of the other things, it's like, hey, that is still a win in my book. So not quite sure what's going to happen as a result of it, but we'll see. It's definitely a step in the right direction. So I wanted to share that. I know that there's been a lot of things happening in the last, almost week at this point. And I have few other videos I have to make. I'm just trying to, order them in a way that makes the most sense and presents things chronologically. So yeah, it's just funny because, a while back, it's like there was nothing really going on. There was nothing for me to talk about. So it's like, well, either I don't make a video or I make a video talking about some random shit. And I'm like, I don't want to make pointless videos. So there was a period where I made very few videos. And now it's like, I just can't seem to be able to make enough videos to just share everything that's going on. And it's just funny going from one extreme to the other. But I know it's only temporary. I've gone through intense periods like this before. So I know what to expect. To some degree, of course, because every time it's slightly different. But yeah, it's definitely not something new. It is ironic, though. Well, maybe not ironic, but it's something. whatever it is, it's something. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll check back in the next video.